Police have arrested at least 7 key spokespeople campaigning against the proscription of direct action group Palestine Action. In dawn raids across the country this morning, 7 people from Defend Our Juries were arrested under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. The number of arrests went from 5 to 7. This came just hours before they were scheduled to give a press conference on Saturday's upcoming protest. Here's the moment 25-year-old Paddy Friend, a law student, was arrested under terrorism law.
So yeah, this is what happens in Britain in 2025.
Right, give me the other hand.
Opposing genocide.
Right, just watch your wrist there. Alright, so Patrick, this is calling from New Scotland Yard, just so warrant casting in plain clothes, okay? I'm recording everything. So I'm going to be placing you under arrest, okay? And I'm going to read out the reason for that. The time now is 7:10 in the morning, it's the 2nd of September. So Patrick, you are under arrest on suspicion of committing the offence of Section 12, subsection 3 of the Terrorism Act 2000. You are alleged to have addressed an online Zoom meeting between the 10th of July 2025 and the 21st of August 2025 for the purpose of encouraging support and furthering the activities of prescribed organisation Palestine Action. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention a question, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. So the arrest is necessary to prevent loss of evidence, prevent collusion with co-suspects, and to allow for searches under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act and to facilitate a police interview. Okay, so that's the reasons for your arrest today. We will be taking you to a police station, as I just mentioned. So, if everyone's happy, we'll take Patrick out. Okay, right, Patrick, if you just follow my colleague, I'll stand behind you. Right, we'll see you later. Cheers.
As you heard there a moment ago, Paddy was arrested for allegedly speaking at Zoom meetings for the purpose of encouraging support for and furthering the activities of Palestine Action. The Zoom calls in question were public and intended to provide legal briefings for those who signed up to take part in actions to protest the proscription of Palestine Action. Palestine Action is, of the 10th of July this year, prescribed as a terrorist organisation under UK law. It is the first non-violent direct action group to be prescribed in that way. And being a member of or encouraging support for the group is now an offence punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Also arrested in this morning's dawn raids was former government lawyer Tim Crossland, who co-founded Defend Our Juries. No one has so far been arrested for taking part in or joining Zoom calls, only the hosts of the Zoom calls. Amnesty International has called the arrests a, quote, blatant attempt to muzzle free speech. And Amnesty Campaign's director, Kerry Moscow-Gorio, said this in a statement earlier today. Criminalising speech or protest is only permitted when it incites violence, hatred, or discrimination. To be clear, expressing support for Palestine Action does not meet this threshold. In fact, arresting and prosecuting people in this context is a violation of the UK's obligations under human rights law. Amnesty calls for the immediate and unconditional release of these people and yet again implores the government to redirect its energy from criminalising peaceful demonstrators to focusing on taking immediate and unequivocal action to put a stop to Israel's genocide and ending any risk of UK complicity in it. Despite the raids, Defend Our Juries will be going ahead with its action as planned on Saturday. At least 1,000 people have signed the pledge to hold signs in Parliament Square that read, quote, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action, and risk arrest under UK terror law. Earlier today, I caught up with Angie Zelter. She's a peace activist and Nobel Peace Prize nominee with decades of experience and over 100 arrests to her name in countries across the world, not just here in the UK. I began by asking Angie about her 2 most recent arrests.
The first was the most interesting because I was interrogated by the counter-terrorism police in Brixton's police station. And I usually self-represent, and I didn't have a lawyer present. And I basically said to him, aren't you feeling really uncomfortable because you're not doing your real job? We are obviously not terrorists and you're wasting your time and you know we're not terrorists. So why aren't you complaining about it to your upper? And he looked very, very ashamed in a way. And he carried on with his questions about, you know, where did you get the idea? Who told you to do it? Did you sign your own placard and all that kind of thing? to which I didn't answer very many questions, but I was just saying to him, look, you should be dealing with the real terrorists, not stopping peaceful protest. This arrest when the 500 took place was just amazing. That took ages to get us. There were further south, a police station there, weren't interrogated, and both times released under bail conditions.
What do you think the purpose of these arrests is?
It's to satisfy the Israeli Zionists who are really pushing our government to stop any protest. They even have their people inside the BBC so that most people don't get the real information about what's going on. So they're just trying to make sure that this doesn't continue. What they don't realize is the more repressive a government becomes, the more determined people are to resist. Because this is a genocide. It is absolutely horrendous. And the majority of people in this country cannot stand the fact that we're doing nothing about it. We're selling them arms. We're still trading with them. We train their soldiers here. We train their pilots. We're about to give them a contract to train our soldiers into how to kill people because they've got so much experience about this, which is disgusting because they're not doing it according to international law. And the only thing that makes a soldier not a murderer is when they are given permission to do it because they're keeping within international law. So our soldiers are going to be trained by murderers to be murderers.
You said that the officer you were speaking to sort of looked a bit downtrodden. And then a moment ago, you mentioned the Zionist lobby and the efforts to effectively appease the Zionist lobby through these mass arrests. I wonder, is the lobby trying to operate through the Home Office, the Home Secretary, the government, and then, of course, they then push this down to the level of operational policing, the Metropolitan Police Service, etc. Do you think there's maybe a tension there potentially at some point, if this carries on, between the police and the Home Office?
Well, I would hope that there's a tension across all government ministries and the judiciary, because we know, luckily from independent journalists, because the mainstream doesn't cover all of this stuff, how many Israeli delegations have been to the Attorney General, to the Home Secretary, to the Defense Secretary, and how disgusting the Israeli ambassador is in this country, and yet she's not told to go. There must be tensions. I mean, we know there's tensions within the BBC. 111, I think, some of BBC people have spoken out against the fact that it's biased reporting. It's not honest reporting. We know that there's a lot of lawyers who've written out and said, look, this is not you're breaking international law. You're putting Britain into a terrible situation here. So there must be, within all branches of our society, a deep unease about what's going on, because we're human beings, and the majority of human beings, when they see what's happening in Gaza, and now today in the West Bank, we are now hearing that Smotrich has said that there's been more demolitions in the West Bank in the last year than ever before, and that they are putting in huge restrictions. They're not going to be allowing students to get to schools or nurses and doctors to get to hospitals. This is in the West Bank, more illegal settlements. So they're going in because they're realizing that the majority of the world is against what they're doing, and they want to take as much land and create as many facts on the ground as possible, as quickly as possible. So while attention is on Gaza, they're taking over the West Bank as well.
You're a veteran activist and you've been arrested almost 200 times. You've obviously got a massive amount of experience in this field. It's very important to say, of course, you have been arrested almost 200 times. You have not been charged almost 200 times. Does this arrest or this series of arrests pertaining to Palestine Action, does this whole episode feel different in any way to your decades-long experience of activism and being arrested?
First of all, let me say all of my protests are totally non-violent, okay? All of them. And that have been in many different countries. This arrest feels very, very different because Britain is very, very different. We are sliding towards a dictatorship, a fascist dictatorship. And it is absolutely outrageous that this government has been supporting Israel in its genocide. That is what is so different. And the amount of repression. Now, this is the first time that I've been in a campaign where counterterrorism and the police have asked Zoom to close down meetings of maybe several hundred people who are trying to get a legal training or non-violence training to do with defend our jurors. They close it down at the last minute. So different platforms have had to be used. And then spokespeople just about to go this morning to a press conference to explain what we're going to be doing on Saturday and why, have had dawn raids and are now being questioned by the police and being charged or arrested anyway under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. I didn't think that I lived in a society where peaceful protest would be so outlawed. It's been happening bit by bit. People haven't been noticing the slide without civil rights being taken away from us. But we've now got to a point which is absolutely horrendous now. And I think that is why so many people are coming out and getting arrested, even though the implications of being arrested for terrorism are quite severe.
I mean, the point you make about Zoom, which of course is an American company, it's quite extraordinary. It's a company where freedom of speech, freedom of political assembly, etc., are enshrined in law. That's not to say the United States is perfect, but they're enshrined in law in a way that they aren't in this country. And a company from that country is doing things here which it probably legally would not be able to do in the United States. I mean, that is quite something. In regards to Zoom, are you making any next steps? Are there any sort of lines of inquiry you're trying to open up about that? Because that does seem like something that most people would simply not agree with, this idea that an American company can just scrap an ability for free citizens to discuss something which is totally within the limits of the law.
Yeah, I mean, it is extraordinary, but then just think what the States is going through. They have got a horrendous leader at the moment, is taking horrendous steps to close down all kinds of debate there, and also interfering in the judiciary and taking over. Again, we have a populist leader who is taking the rights away of human beings in the States. So I don't think we can trust American technology and American Zooms and things anymore. What this is doing to the protest movement, I think, is making us more aware that we have to choose alternatives. In just the same way, if we want to get the news, we go to alternative media now. We make sure that we get the news from other places. It means that we won't be using Zoom anymore. We will be using other things. We won't be using Google and Amazon and things like this. So it's not just the BDS movement stopping using Israeli products and things. We're going to have to stop using all sorts of corporate things, because the world is in a really difficult stage at the moment, really a crucial time. We have terrible climate change, biodiversity loss, human rights abuses all over, endless wars, forever wars. And this is because we have not got the right structures. And our society has been crumbling for a very long time, with all of the cuts and all of the ways in which we support the rich and the big and the powerful, and we're ignoring the poorer segments of our society. So in a rich country, we have so much poverty, it's ridiculous. There's a lot that we're going to have to be doing in the and one of the things we can do is on Saturday, at least, stand up against the genocide and against the proscription of a peaceful organisation.
You've said that Britain is moving towards fascism. You've talked about certain rights being undermined by the present government, important to say, by a Labour government, which is headed up by a former lawyer, a former director of public prosecutions. And it sounds to me like you think that the US and the UK are on the same track, even though ostensibly they're governed by people who are meant to be very different. Do you think that effectively Britain and America right now are headed in the same direction? Because that might be something of a controversial statement for Labour voters. Even if they agree with you, they're against proscription of Palestine Action, they might say, hold on a second, Keir Starmer is not Donald Trump.
I don't know that it's very controversial. I mean, ever since the British Empire collapsed, if you like, we have been the dog's body of the US. So, we have all these US air bases here. We're having nuclear weapons from the US coming back to Lakenheath. They're there now. We basically do whatever the US wants us to do. So we have always been a lapdog to the US. And the US empire itself will crumble at some stage. But yeah, I don't think it's very controversial at all. We're going the same way. Um, we are going towards a dictatorship, and step by step we can see it. If we don't learn from history, and there's a fascinating book by a Turkish author saying how to lose a country, the 7 steps towards fascism and dictatorship, and she explains what happened in Turkey under Erdogan, and that is what is happening here.
So, a final question: what's next for the Defend Our Juries campaign?
Well, Saturday, we'll have 1,000+ people sitting down in Parliament Square or nearby, and we'll see what the police and the state will do. And if they come down hard, the next time we'll have even more and even more, because we are facing repression. And if you face repression, you can't stop. Basically, what's going on in the world means that more and more people are going to have to stand up and speak out very, very clearly. And if that means getting arrested for terrorism, then we have to get arrested for terrorism. And I think people will come. I mean, I don't know that the press has really been covering hundreds of thousands of people on the streets pretty much every other week in central London saying this is disgusting. Lots of Jewish people coming out and saying, look, Jewishness is not the same as Zionism. What's happening in Israel is Zionist. It is not Jewishness. So you have people across the board, Muslims, Christians, Jewish people, people of no faith, all sorts of ethnicities coming together day after day after day in their little country towns. Like here in Wales, we have little things going on almost every week to do with Palestine and resisting it. And, people are just absolutely disgusted with what's going on. So Saturday will be a great day when 1,000+ people will be sitting down there, writing on their placards, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action. And we hope that at long last, the ban will be lifted.
Well, that was peace activist Angie Zelter speaking with me earlier today. The proscription of Palestine Action is being challenged in courts, and its co-founder, Huda Amori, has been granted permission for a judicial review of the decision to equate the non-violent protest group with the likes of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And Amori's lawyers say that while Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is busy talking a big game about why Palestine Action needs to be prescribed to the press, her claims about how dangerous the group is are not backed up with evidence. For example, Cooper told the BBC this last month. There may be people who are objecting to prescription who don't know the full nature of this organisation because of court restrictions on reporting while serious prosecutions are underway. But it's really important that no one is in any doubt that this is not a non-violent organisation. But none of the evidence provided by the Home Office in open court actually supports this extraordinary claim, according to Amori's lawyers anyway. And they argue that anything important enough to brief in the press should be in the Home Office's open case and available to open court. Bernberg Pierce, representing Huda Amori, has sent a letter to the government saying as much. Here's an excerpt. The cynical media campaign reflects a fundamental lack of respect for court proceedings and either indicates an attempt by your client to influence media coverage through assertions which she cannot evidence, or is reflective of a serious breach of her duty of candour in these proceedings. The proper place for your client to advance her case is in court. Your client's approach in relation to briefing the media with a wholly different basis for prescription is entirely improper and a breach of her duty to the court. If your client has evidence to support her assertions, this ought to have been disclosed. As she has not, she must cease her misleading campaign immediately. We're talking about the Home Secretary here. And the argument, I think, is overwhelmingly powerful. Novara Media has actively been trying to get clarity from the Attorney General on how the prescription of Palestine Action will affect journalists and the media. Days before the ban, we wrote to the Attorney General and the Home Office with a series of questions about how the prescription would affect our reporting and what the risks for journalists were under the 2000 Terrorism Act. Novara Media has now received a reply from the Home Office where it failed to answer all of our questions bar one. After 6 long weeks, the Home Office confirmed that it is not an offence to simply criticise the government's decision to prescribe Palestine Action. Thank goodness for that. But the Home Office also reminded us that there is no absolute defence of journalism under counter-terrorism legislation. You can read our article on that response, as well as our original letter, over at novaramedia.com. That letter from Bernbo Pierce is just, I use the word guardedly, I'm going to say it is extraordinary. It is extraordinary. You had the Labour Party in opposition talking about how the Tories were taking us to fascism, and at the same time, you've got a Home Secretary now in 2025 saying that we can clamp down on civil liberties, we can criminalise a protest organisation, a non-violent protest organisation, and the reason why I'm doing that is for reasons you can't really know, but it'll come out in the court proceedings, but of course it doesn't come out in the court proceedings because it seemingly doesn't even exist. So she's lying, but she's also fundamentally, it appears, we could be wrong, but there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. She's lying, it appears, and at the same time, she's effectively waging a communications war, an information war through the media. You're trying to misinform people via the media in order to clamp down on their civil liberties. If that's not Trumpian, I don't know what is.